So to give you a little bit of context, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself. So I'm an Aboriginal woman who is actually from, my family is part of the stolen generation of this country. And as such, whilst I connect as an Aboriginal person and very much value my cultural background, I'm not able to actually represent whereabouts in Australia my people came from. And there was a lot of shame back then from my grandmother, and she never spoke about it. She used to work out on cattle stations and was taught being Aboriginal wasn't a good thing. At 10 years of age, I lost my mother to suicide. Prior to that, she suffered greatly from being mentally unwell. She had a lot of times of self-harm, which I experienced with her as a young person with my two sisters. I myself have tried to end my life several times, and I'm really proud to still be here to share my messages and as an Aboriginal person in this country. It's really unusual for me to get emotional. This is the second time in the last 6 months when I've presented and been emotional, and obviously it's because I'm touching on the realness of this for my people. A couple of years ago I lost my sister to suicide as well, my younger sister, who both her and my older sister, throughout our lives, we spent time in foster care, we spent time with people who weren't from our family. We grew up around violence, around alcoholism, and my mum was in a lot of pain, and it's really a blessing for me to be able to do the work that I do and have the voice that I have to change this for the future and to break that cycle for my little girl. My girl is 10 going on 20. She's the light of my life, and she's reflected with me before that it's interesting for her when I have sat down and helped her work through some of the social things in her friends group. She goes, "Wow, Mum, if that's what you do for young people, aren't they lucky?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you can reflect this at 10 years of age," because I have sheltered her from a lot of what I experienced when I grew up and having to be a lot older than what I was as a 10-year-old, and being dispossessed, living with my grandparents. Actually moved to Sydney for a year with my uncle, and it was certainly experiences that shaped me for the better to do this work. I wanted to introduce myself that way because I think it's a very different way to how we as professionals tend to get up and introduce ourselves. It's quite easy for me to stand here in front of you all and say, actually, I'm an Aboriginal mental health first aid facilitator, I'm a nationally accredited mediator, I'm a chair of a board, I'm on the Queensland Suicide Prevention Task Force, I'm doing work with the National Mental Health Commission, doing stuff with Department of Health for the Digital Gateway. I'm involved in very many levels, at the local level, my community, for my people, but also, now having a bit more of a voice for suicide prevention and across the country. And I think that, what we don't do well is understanding to connect to people and to really have that rapport and to build that with them at a level that is as basic human beings. You want to share information, and you have to do that by sharing a bit about yourself, which sometimes is the extreme opposite to what you've been trained to do as a professional. I think for myself as an Aboriginal person, there's a real sense of obligation and at times a real sense of being burdened with my responsibility for my people in this country. And I know I'm not the only one, and I speak very much to my own personal views and experiences in this, but at the same time I still give a voice to my people. Can only get better, right? This country has failed over and over again. And I think we're at the stage now where they realise they have to do things differently for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But it's not always been the way in which they view. They keep doing the same thing and wonder why it fails over and over again. And to be honest, it's because there's not coming from a place of mutual respect. There has not been value placed in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, healing practices, and elders. If you go back to the Gayudhuri Declaration, which is the adapted version of the Wharearta Declaration for Australia, all of the processes within that document talk to valuing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across a systems level, across an individual level, and holding those people in place and in partnership with mainstream services. And it spoke really greatly to me last night with Annie Millie when she was talking about that mutuality. So it's a shared journey. It's not Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people doing it on their own, and it's not mainstream services doing it on their own. We actually need to come together and collaborate a lot more so that we can actually have some proper healing and treatment practices that are inclusive of culture, because that is the biggest gap. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need to lead this space, and they need the support of mainstream services, who typically get the funding but don't necessarily work very well with communities. And I think that's something that everyone here collectively can do. I think that valuing lived experience is been something that SPA and other agencies in Australia have been pushing for, but it's only now coming to the forefront. For myself personally, it's been interesting to do my own journey and to reflect on what is my value and my worth when there are mainstream services who do not understand what I bring, what my lived experience. I connect with young people and I've run programs, suicide prevention programs with young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Actually, the first program in Australia to reduce suicidality amongst Aboriginal people were about to be published in the Australian Psychologist, and it's my own personal lived experiences that allow me to build rapport with someone within half an hour of meeting them, and then they say, I want to die. And I say, who have you told about that? Nobody. So you're just telling me for the first time, how long have you been feeling this way? Oh, a long time now. Wow, thank you. It's not me who is like, oh, well, you should want to talk to me. It's actually me thanking them for the trust that they have and how I have been allowed to be a part of their journey of healing and support them in whatever that looks like. I want to share a bit of a story with you about something that happened recently that I was involved with, and it was a meeting. It's very easy for services to get kind of caught up in business. And I'm part of a board where, it's an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisation. They've been around for 20 years, which speaks a lot for them. They've gone from strength to strength. And we recently reviewed the CEO's salary. For 5 years, that CEO never received a salary look at, an increase or anything. And she had so much shame bringing that to us as something that, should be looked at. And comparatively, she gets paid chicken scratch compared to most other people in the sector, let alone a CEO of a massive organisation. And she was very emotional when we reflected back to her our own errors in not valuing her and not actually sharing and acknowledging the amazing work that she does, and then to empower her by saying, actually, you deserve more, we're going to give it to you, because she didn't feel, I think that oppression and that stuff for us sits deep. She didn't feel like she deserved that. She didn't feel like that was something for her. And I think if what you can do in your journeys moving forward for all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, all the Indigenous peoples from all the countries, is to help them value themselves more and to help them be able to be leaders in the work that they're doing, because there's always people in community who don't necessarily have a piece of paper that say that they've got a degree or a certain level of training which you might be looking for in your organisation, but gee, they've got amazing community contacts, and gee, they're the one person that everyone goes to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when they've got issues going on. So why aren't we better valuing and supporting them and bringing them on this journey to end suicide? I think that there's a long way to go, but I'm really excited to see opportunities like this that are coming up where people are actually having a conversation about it, having a real conversation, and remembering that at the end of the day, we're all human. Any life lost to suicide is a complete and absolute tragedy. I've lost much more than I ever want to or hope to continue to experience, but I know it's part of my job. It's part of what happens in the community, and it's part of the issues for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people being continually overrepresented in suicide deaths in this country. Until we start to help to heal and look to reconciliation, that won't be different. But there's so much work going on